Joining us today is longtime Alexander resident Roy Arends. We're going to be talking about today 100 years ago today, that is June 11th, and what is now rated as an F3 tornado hit the town of Alexander. And why it's kind of big, well, as an F3 tornado, you think about that scale, that's up there. It's midway. They go up to EF5 now with the enhanced scale. And Roy, first of all, thanks a lot for having us here. I found my way here. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you. It's good to have you.
So, Roy, before we talk about this 100th anniversary of this F3 tornado, why don't you just tell our audience a little bit about yourself? You're a lifelong Alexander resident, I guess.
Yes, well, I was born about 2 miles northwest of here on a farm and went through school here in Alexander and then Cal and went to college for a little bit. And I was drafted, served in the military. And my wife and I got married. We lived about 2 miles southwest of town. And we built this house soon after we got married, and we've been married for over 50 years. And we've lived here basically my whole life.
Very good. So, like I said, 100 years ago today, that's June 11th, an F3 tornado came through here. And now, obviously, no one's around that saw that tornado, but you're telling me your dad at least had some memory of that tornado back in 1925?
Yes, he was born in 15. In 25, he was 10 years old, so he had good recollection of the tornado. They lived 3.5 miles west of Alexander, and they came to town after the tornado, 3 days after the tornado, and they were surprised. They didn't even know there had been a tornado in Alexander. Communication isn't what it is today, and they, of course, tried to help clean up and do other things, but they were living their own lives, and they went back to, I know they went back home that night. So, but they did see the devastation. There were 5 churches in town at that time, and 3 of them were severely damaged or destroyed. And the railroad depot, I know my dad recollected that the depot agent had hid behind a stove and broke his leg, if I remember right, if that's what he said. And at that time, there was a stockyards in Alexander, and they had just loaded hogs on the rail cars, and the rail cars blew over, and the hogs were running around Alexander. It was quite a devastating event for the time.
So when your dad came to town, I mean, back in 1925, you didn't have all these people going on Facebook and making videos of it, making their own videos of it. But like you said, the communication was down. You say they rode in on like a horse and buggy?
I don't think they had an automobile yet. They came in on a horse and buggy.
So that kind of shock of when you come to town and you didn't hear anything about it, you actually saw it, that was probably quite something too.
Yes.
At 10 years old to see a town almost flat, especially down the middle.
Right. Yes. Yeah, it was quite an event to come. I mean, you're expecting to go to town to get groceries, and here, well, the grocery store is closed or unavailable for business. Maybe it's not totally destroyed. People are trying to clean up yet.
And so, again, we are joined by Roy Arends, a longtime Alexander resident, as we talk about, again, 100th anniversary of this F3 tornado that came through the town of Alexander. One of the big eventful things that happened here in terms of on the bad side. Obviously, there's been devastating tornadoes across our broadcast area. And another thing, too, this day and age, there's that immediate response. I remember when Parkersburg had their tornado 17 years ago. We had some friends and even family near the tornado path. There's response immediately. Do you remember anything said about how did they respond back in 1920s, Roy?
Well, there were some volunteers from Belmont that came to help clean up after the tornado. But again, communication and equipment wasn't like it is today. They probably used hand saws to cut the trees down across the streets and pick up stuff. There wasn't the mechanization that there is today. So if you think back, they had to pick it all up by hand, or any sawing that was done for the trees was done by hand. That's a lot of manual labor.
I want to mention Amy Froling was very helpful with this as well. She's the city clerk for City of Alexander, City of Rowan as well, in Missouri, I believe. So she gave us a letter here too, or some information behind this. So Back in 1925, this was $150,000 worth of damage. You think today, well, that's not enough for a town. That's 100 years ago. What you and Amy here, Roy, were talking here last week was it's over $2.5 million worth of damage was done in 1925.
Yeah, $2.5 million worth of damage, and for a small community, that was quite devastating. There was a lot of damage in the small town of Alexander.
And so I was looking through some of this as well. You mentioned there were injuries, but no fatalities, though.
There were no fatalities. Chris Larson was a pillar of the community, and he might have been, I know he was sheriff or later on, but he broke his leg, and then the depot agent, like I said, I believe those were the only significant injuries. I'm sure there were lots of cuts and bruises and bumps from going through the tornado, but those were the only injuries requiring medical attention.
You're mentioning there were 3 churches that were either partially or mostly torn. Congregational Church was the largest at the time, was one of them that was demolished. So I don't know if you have exact, but you know what the time frame was between that June 11th tornado and when the town, as you could say, maybe started to look back to its normal self following the tornado. How long did recovery take? Do you know?
I don't have any idea what that took. I'm sure it was not like today. There wasn't a roofer coming to town the next day offering to replace your shingles.
So yeah, you didn't have all those vehicles just coming immediately. Like you said, vehicles were fairly new at that point, so it's amazing the difference in 100 years. Again, we are joined by Roy Arends, longtime Alexander resident, as we talk about, again, the 100th anniversary of that tornado. In 1925, like I said, it was rated F3, and Roy's dad was about 10 years old at the time. He said during that came to town, and much of it was flat, and took probably years before it looked more like its old self. And Roy, before I let you go today, anything else you'd like to add? I know you've been a lifelong resident here, and you're Mayor Pro Tem. First time I talked to Mayor Pro Tem of Alexander, too, I guess. But anything else you'd like to add about, 100 years of this, or anything else here in Alexander?
No, there's not much to add to that. RAGBRAI is coming through July 23rd, which will be a major event for Alexander. We're preparing for that. And if anybody would like to come and watch the bikes go by, that would be fantastic. We're going to celebrate agriculture on that day. There's free burgers, and we're going to have agriculture equipment on display for RAGBRAI.
Very good. Well, Roy, I appreciate the time. Thanks for having me up here and learning a little history from 1925, and hopefully we'll talk down the road.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mitch.
All right, that's Roy Arends, today's guest on the Newsmaker program.